Welcome to Sincerely Future You, a podcast for female entrepreneurs looking to scale their business by mastering their time, money, and drama. I'm your host, Jess McKinley, founder of What's Happyning Coaching, a life coaching program that helps ambitious women like you make decisions today with the future you in mind. So if you're ready to make more money, have more time, and handle all that drama that comes with it, you've come to the right place. Hi, Hapsters. Welcome back. I have an exciting guest for you on the show, but as you know, before we dive in, I want to just update you on things that are neither important to you or to the world, but I just feel like all the time people are asking me, they love the little tidbits of real life behind a life coach. I'm just updating you on what's going on since we last spoke. I have decided last minute that we're going to go on a baby moon. This is like a trend that I keep seeing my brother, who's younger than me, and all his friends doing. And I didn't do it with my son because that wasn't a thing then. And now I'm like, I think before this baby comes in June, we're just going to go on a baby moon. So I have frantically decided, wait, when is the last week that I can fly and where do we want to go, and planned a whole trip. So now we're going to Mexico City, you guys, in like 2 weeks. So that has been the fun little update that has been consuming my week, and I can't wait. So if you guys have recommendations, if you've been to Mexico City, I need all the recommendations. I think I've already reserved 2 nights of dinners because big foodie, and I've already gotten some recs, but still open to our day-to-day activities that we should do, especially maternity-friendly ones. So yeah, really excited about that. All of you food lovers will be excited about this trip because I hear from a lot of people that it's some of their best bites of food they've ever tried in their life. Cannot wait. My pregnant self really appeals to this idea. So anyway, now let's dive into the topic today. We have a guest for you who is someone that I am just actually coming into acquaintance with, Amy Young. She used to work at CBS television and Google, where she specialized in TV strategy, business development, sales, and partnerships. You guys, how does a person go from CBS TV and Google to being a life coach? I know most of you really want to know what changes in a person's brain that got her there, and you're going to get the opportunity to hear from her. Since moving into life coaching, she has been able to facilitate personal and team growth at global powerhouses like Google, where she used to work, and Oxford University, maybe you heard of it, and startups like Princeton Mortgage, but also in intimate venues like your living room, coffee houses, and Zoom chats. First of all, Amy, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And so tell us, I know I gave your whole bio and it is just sprinkled, I have to say, with some of the fanciest titles and names. And I think that that's so fittingly part of your journey, right? Like a lot of us do grow up, and if you're smart and if you pursue things with that, goal of achievements, you can end up at these big fancy places. And tell us a little bit about what led you to then leaving those places that people aspire to becoming a life coach.
Oh gosh, yes. Thank you for asking. It is something I actually get stopped and asked about a lot, just because the places, to your point, that I worked for, some people are their dream jobs. And I was very fortunate to get a job at CBS right out of college in Boston and worked my way up. And Google then called after 15 years at CBS to see if I would come and work for them. And at the time I thought, well, I love CBS, but if I'm going to leave, it's going to be for free coffee and free food in the cafeterias at Google,
don't they have
right?
like slides at Google? I don't really know how else.
They have the nap pods, they have the slides. Yeah. It really is like an adult playground, and the people are wonderful. It wasn't a great fit for me, which I know I'll get to in a minute, but it is all of the things that you hear about from a perk perspective. It's phenomenal. And so I spent about 2 years there before I would say epically burning out. And I don't mean epically in that I like lit the place on fire as I walked out or anything dramatic like that. But yeah. But I was having panic attacks on almost a, weekly basis. I have 3 kids at home. They were younger at the time. It's been about 4 years since I left. And I'm going to date myself here. My BlackBerry would start buzzing as I was folding laundry at, 9:00 at night. And I would just start crying. I can't do this anymore. I can't split my brain in all of these directions. I can't do something that I don't care enough about anymore. And I had worked with a coach previously in my career, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I know you feel this way as a coach, where you have those moments with people, and it's everything. And
Once
so
it's hard to go back to unknowing what it's like to see your own thoughts, right?
Right? Oh my gosh. It's like once your gears in your brain just shift literally into that place, it's like, how could I not do this? I can't imagine ever not being in this place of support for people.
Yeah, you described right, you had your head down, like as you were going and achieving and looking and trying to create this life. That's what we're told that we want. It's like, you don't really take the opportunity to then also look at your thoughts. You're just in the thoughts, right? And then you get there. I think actually we were having this conversation partially before we recorded. So pick up where we left off.
Yeah, it's so great because I think many of your listeners can probably relate to this, where you almost have this checklist, right? If you're driven, if you're smart, you want to achieve things, you graduate from school and you're like, okay, I'm going to get my first job, right? And I'm going to get promoted, and then I'm going to get promoted, and I'm going to meet my spouse or my partner, and I'm going to get married, and then I'm going to have kids, and I'm going to get promoted again. And you literally just put your head down and you keep going, and you're just checking boxes. You're just checking boxes the whole time. And I said, what happened is I got to this place, and all of a sudden I picked my head up, and I had 2 kids, and I was an executive, and I was exhausted commuting 3 hours a day. And I was like, wait, this was supposed to be it.
You're like, why don't I feel that sunshiny feeling that I was promised?
Right? They all lied to me. What? This was that I was supposed to be happy now, right? I was supposed to feel fulfilled. I was supposed to be happy. And I had so much to be grateful for, right? That's the frustrating thing.
Grateful, right? It's not just happy. It's you're supposed to be grateful for what I have. How dare you even question the life that you built?
Yes. And that's when I realized, oh, I've been making decisions based on other people's definitions of success and happiness. But I had become so disconnected. And here's where I think the burnout comes in. I had become so disconnected from myself in terms of what I wanted and why I really wanted to work in the first place, the things that I liked about the industries that I was in, that I didn't even know what I liked anymore. I didn't even know who I was. I didn't know what do I do for fun? What somebody had asked me, what was the last time you actually laughed? I don't know that I would have really had an answer. So it's that process of becoming so disconnected that really inspired me to start doing the work that I now do, because I never want another strong, extremely capable woman to ever have to go through what I did. We're too darn valuable for that to happen.
I love hearing these stories, right? Because actually it's the story of almost all of my clients. So they start there, they have this come to Jesus moment, they burn it all down. And then they're like, okay, what now? I have maybe this idea or this passion. And they're like, am I qualified? They go through all of that. Right. And then I used to work with people that were at that starter phase, but now I work with people that have this business, but they really want to sort out the other drama that goes along with the process when you're a little further along. But I always want to know in this moment. So once you had this moment where you said you were crying and doing laundry and your BlackBerry is buzzing. I love that. I never had a BlackBerry, and I was always just I think I remember my friend being like, you are being left behind. And by the time I was ready to get a BlackBerry, they were out, and I was like, you're being left behind. I'm going to get the Samsung anyway. So you're at this, how long did it take you from that moment to leaving and to figuring out where you wanted to go next, and that life coaching was the thing?
Yeah. So it was all in all about a 10-month journey. I would hit a point at that low moment with the BlackBerry where I realized I have to do something to use that part of my brain again that just enjoys things. I need to just do something for myself. And so I had always thought about coaching, and I looked into a life coaching school and decided, what the heck? At least if I hate it, I'll know I hate it.
Yeah.
Right. But I won't know if I don't try. So I signed up for a certification program and I ended up loving it. I literally will never forget calling my mom in a Trader Joe's parking lot in central New Jersey with tears streaming down my face at 9 o'clock, going like, I found what I meant to do. You know, it was just, I had one of those moments where I helped someone unlock something really deep in them. And it changed everything that I knew I wanted to do with the rest of my career. It hasn't been easy since then, but it's been more meaningful than anything that I ever could have imagined doing.
So good. I love that. I mean, really that shift, if you were to sum it up in one sentence, is kind of like you started asking questions more of like, who am I and who am I becoming, instead of like, what do I want to achieve next?
Yes.
Such a different question. One of the things that I talk about in this podcast all the time is like, one of the best things that you can do, even if you can't hire a coach yet, or you're not ready to hire a coach yet, or you're saving up to hire a coach, whatever the situation is, one of the things you can do right now is ask your brain higher quality questions. And right there, what you did, that shift in just asking yourself different kind of questions, like you stopped asking like, what's the next thing I want to do or achieve? And instead, like, who do I want to become now in this phase of my life? And I really think that like that is so apparent in how quickly you were able to find something that lit you up.
Completely. And here's what goes along with that, I think, is you also have to give yourself the space to ask yourself those questions.
Yeah.
One of the best gifts I ever gave myself was I went to a retreat. I went to a 4-day retreat with 50 other women who I didn't know. But it was led by someone that I had been following online for years. And it was the first time in, I can't tell you how long, where I actually had the space to think about some of those deep questions, right?
Yeah.
To ask myself, like, how am I really doing? Do I enjoy what I'm doing? How do I feel at this point in my life? What do I want to change? What do I want to keep? So often we just get on that hamster wheel and we don't give ourselves the space to ask those deep questions, which I completely agree with you are so important to remaining whole as a person.
Yeah. And so to get back to like this topic, I actually was listening to an episode of yours that you were guesting on Get Carried Away, I think, podcast. And you were talking about a little bit about your identity and the shift that happened when you then dove into life coaching. And then you're all of a sudden going from getting dressed and going out there and being this high status person to like, all of a sudden you're saying, okay, that doesn't matter to me anymore. That's not what it's made of. But your brain still has thoughts that like, yeah, but I still want people to think of me in that light. I still want people to think of me in that way. And I think that I was so intrigued by what you're saying. You're like, yeah, sometimes I do miss it. Like I miss like getting all dressed up, and I could do it at home. And I'm curious, like, I don't know when you recorded that episode and from then to now, even if things have changed, but I love the idea that like our self-concept is what is creating what we're doing, how we're showing up, how we dress, the amount of money we make, all of it. How would you say that your journey has been to like change? How has your self-concept changed since shifting into like an entrepreneur role and away from this corporate achiever? And how has it stayed the same?
It has been such a roller coaster from an identity perspective, which I'm sure you can relate to, and all of your listeners, because I didn't think I had to work on my identity much when I left and I started my business. I was like, okay, so now I'm just going to take this one hat off and I'm going to put this other hat on and I'm going to start my business, and, you know, the rest is history, right? And what I didn't realize was, you know, especially on those hard days, right, how much and I used to think it was more tied to ego, but really it is just that sense of identity and self-worth that I had to form a whole new definition of, right? When you don't have those metrics of an annual performance review, right? Or if you goal like that your company has achieved, I had to literally rewrite every script of goals, the way that I looked at goals, the way that I looked at success, what my definition of that was, any conditional happiness or conditions I had put on what success meant, I had to completely rebuild. And I know we were talking before we started recording here a little bit about that concept of dress, right? And what that means and what that meant for me. And I used to love putting on a dress. I used to
Can I ask you, do you own like Louboutins or anything like that? Are you like one of those?
I stopped at Burberry's. I stopped at Burberry shoes. I was like one level below, and I'm very hard on my shoes. So I also was like kind of terrified of having a red sole that I messed up. But so I was one level right below there.
Yeah, all right.
But it was, I just felt like I was a different person. Right? Because especially having young kids at home at the time, it was like, oh, I go from like weekend wearing sweatpants and going to sporting events to like, oh, now I get to be a person, right? Now I get to be my own person who has my
professional.
Exactly. So I got to like get dressed up, put the makeup on, do my hair every single day, and literally walk someplace else. Yeah. Well, now here I am, walking down the hallway. Right? Like here I am dropping the kids off at school. I don't need to get dressed up. I don't need to put the dress on anymore. So I went through a period where I didn't do that. Right. Yeah. Where I didn't wear leggings, but like I would just wear jeans, or I would wear something that was comfortable, and maybe I'd wear shoes, maybe not, but they'd be flats, and I'm 5'3" and I had to get all my pants hemmed because they're not built for flats. So I started just dressing a lot more comfortably. And what I found over time was that mentally, it really affected the way I was showing up.
Yeah. Like, can you give me an example? Because I feel this and I know this deep in my bones, and I've made so many shifts in terms of like my fashion and my closet since in the past 2 years consciously, but like I cannot drive home enough how much it affects the way that I show up around my house. So I'd love to hear like some examples of like what you noticed that was kind of slipping in terms of delivery or in terms of like, I don't know, belief in yourself, etc.
Yeah. What I realized after a period of time was I stopped feeling important because I had associated my self-worth with, at the time, the amount of money that I was making and my title, as much as I wouldn't have admitted that to anyone.
Yeah.
What I've realized is because I had done that, when I stopped doing my hair every day, when I stopped putting on the power outfit or what felt like a power outfit, I immediately allowed myself to absorb a narrative that I wasn't important anymore. And that affected the way that I showed up in my business almost every single day. Because while I would put out the offer, right, or I would have the client consult, or I would build the program, deep inside, there was still that thought of, I'm not really important anymore. I'm not as good as I used to be.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to understand that link between the two.
Right.
And how just the act of blowing my hair dry every day or putting makeup on, right, helped me feel important again, helped me feel like I was worth showing up in my business every day the way I used to show up.
Yeah. And so like, for me, I know one of the things that was happening that I couldn't really explain, I just thought there was something wrong with me, was like, I wasn't showing up on time. Like I felt more casual. And so like, I would be relaxed about when I was showing up to things. And all of a sudden and the other thing was too, like the things that were scheduled where no one else was a part of it. So it wasn't a client appointment. It was not, a meeting with Christine, my podcast producer. It was just something that I had scheduled for me to do. I took it less seriously because, like you said, the thought underneath was I didn't take myself seriously. Yeah. And when you have that thought, it's really difficult to show up in action. I always say like, you're trying to out action a bad thought. And so it doesn't mean that you can't have these thoughts about you if you wear leggings. Like there's no one right outfit to wear. And that's not what we're saying. I don't want it to be misinterpreted, but it's like for you, what are the things that make you feel good in your body that make you, and we can question it from both angles, because I do think there's a little bit of like, all right, like re-questioning the societal, you know what I mean? Like work that has been done to make like, oh, you can only feel beautiful or powerful if you are wearing heels or whatnot.
Right.
There's a bit of that I'm sure is in there. I'm okay with it. Like if you don't like heels and you're just doing it because you want someone else to think a certain thing about you. But for me, like I look at myself differently when I'm wearing heels. I take myself more seriously when I'm doing that around the house. And it's like how the question for me, the high quality question here is like, how do you want to feel when you're showing up to your work day? And so for
Yes.
you, what is that feeling that you want to
Yes.
feel?
I mean, I want to feel like when I walk into my office every day, I can take a deep breath and just say, let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
What emotion is that for you in one word, a one word emotion?
Just powerful.
Powerful. Yeah. I
It
was
is
going to say that
powerful.
for me.
100%. And I look at, there's been a lot of talk about, bringing your whole self to work and what that means.
Mhm.
And I was reading an article recently about, in interviews, people are now willing to show their tattoos, right? They're willing to roll up their sleeves and actually, show themselves more. They don't maybe take a second or third piercing out of their ear when they go for an interview anymore. And that to me just speaks so highly of this as well. And it's so intertwined because we shouldn't have to pretend that we feel a different way or that we are a different person. If we really can, whether our office is in an office building or an office in our homes or a local coffee shop, presenting yourself in a way that's going to allow you to feel the most confident, that's when you're going to bring your best work. That's when you're going to support your clients the best or make the best connections. So it's all about what you just asked. How do you want to feel when you start your day? How do you want to feel when you walk into work?
Yeah. I love powerful. That's definitely on my top 3 characteristics of how I want to feel when I'm just like walking around my house. I think especially for moms, right? Because it's like a whole different thing. Once you become a mom and you're working in your house, trying to put that hat on and off can be very challenging, because if you're like in your side peripheral vision is like toys and like things that trigger your mom brain, it's going to be a bit of a problem. So self-image and self-concept and dress, like it also relates to the space. Like how can you, it's like threefold, right? It's like mindset and understanding how you want to feel. It's also understanding what you can do in terms of creating the self that is most powerful, and then your environment, right? So the people that you're around, but also your space. Do you have a separate office? Do you not? Do you work in your like in a shared space? I'm always curious about this too, because I think everybody has something that works differently for them.
Oh, completely. And it's really important to know that. It's
Yeah.
almost like, what is my definition of my workplace and where do I work best? So right now we're actually in the midst of transforming what was my daughter's old bedroom into my office in my house. My husband and I used to share an office in our home back when the pandemic started. And while we actually thankfully still love each other very much and could share an office, I found that his job was just way too like quick for me to be taking a client call if he would get a call. And so, but sometimes I go to work from a coffee shop if my work depends on it. But for me, having a space that is my own to be myself and to create and to feel, we said when you walk in that door and you want to feel a certain way, it's because I look around and I'm like, I created this space, right? Like I read all those books. I achieved that thing that's on my wall, right? Like these are all things that mean something to me. And all of that goes into how you show up and who you are as a person.
I mean, I think the pandemic really just made this whole conversation relatable to everyone, even if you're in a corporate environment, because a lot of people have just experienced, whether they're still doing it or whether they were for a year or two, like working from home, even when you're showing up to your corporate job. And I have clients who move to work from home and still work from home. and they show up and their background of their Zoom is just like chaos. And this is not me judging at all, because like certainly my house is not perfection, but I do know for myself when I come to the part of my day that I need to be really focused, it's like it's always going to pull from your energy and from your mind space when you, the way you're dressed, the way you're showing up, the way you're presenting, and your space are not matching the self-concept that you want to have.
Yes, so much. One tip and one quick story. You mentioned, the reality of being a working mom. And I'm sure many people listening who have come to work from home in the pandemic can relate. One of the reasons I ended up moving to an office upstairs in our house is because my kids put push pins in my vision board. They literally took push pins and like found a picture of a woman that I had on my vision board and stuck the push pins in her eyes. And I was like, that's it. I need my own space.
Yep. That's so good. Wait, keep going.
Yeah. So, but it ties to what I had a coach who used to call these things tolerations, right? Yes. And tolerations are those, big or small things that just drain your energy, right? It could be anything from a light bulb that you need to change or a mound of paper that's sitting on your desk. All of these things take up brain space and they take up precious energy that you could be devoting to your business or yourself. And so the more things you are literally tolerating in your home environment that take up that space, the less you have to devote to the things that are truly important to you.
Yes. Preach. Oh my goodness. So I know like I really could talk about fashion and business and money like all day long. It's been like a new self-concept for me. I actually did one podcast episode on it as well about like self-concepts and 5 self-concepts that I've developed just because I just decided like, this is who I want to be now, like a fitness person, a amazing co-parent. I'm divorced. And like that identity shift was, all of these are transitions, not just in what you do, but in how you think about yourself. And so for me, being a fashion icon is a self-concept that I've just decided to embrace and to take.
Love it.
And it's hilarious to my friends and family who like, for the longest time, like, you don't own matching socks. Like you are not a fashion icon. And I'm like, no, it's who I am now. Like in my future, like, don't worry about the past. That was all just thought errors. Like, it's fine. This is who I am now. And like in the beginning, it takes other people a while to adapt to. So I think that there is that bit of an imposter syndrome. If you're listening to this and you're like, okay, that sounds nice. Like I'd like to be someone who shows up in a different self-image, but quote unquote, it's just not who I am. I want to just invite to you that like you get to decide to redefine who you are at any age. You could be listening to this podcast and you could be in your 60s and you're like, all of a sudden now I want to care about fashion and I want to show up in a different way. And it's like, yes, I love the idea that who we are, self-concept, our personality is not fixed. And if you're looking to your past to really decide how you want to show up, you're going to be really limited in what shows up for you. So I wanted to like just ask in wrapping, what advice you would have for someone who is like trying to make this transition or wants a different result in their life. And they feel like who they are right now isn't quite like matching, whether that's their environment or like they're a mom, or whether it's like how they're dressing and they just feel like, I don't know anything about fashion or any of that. Any advice you have or anything that you overcame that people could pull from?
Yes. So a couple of things there. And I love how you teed up the concept of identity boxes, right? Like whether we've created them ourselves or other people have created them for us. So often we don't even realize these limiting boxes that we're putting ourselves in, whether we're the sporty one, because that's the way we've always been, or we're the smart one, or we can't wear this, or we can't wear that, right? Mm-hmm. The first thing is just becoming aware of it, right? Is understanding, okay, who have I been? How have I acted? How have I been dressing? Right? Mm-hmm. Do I like that? Right? Taking the time to stop and ask yourself if you do. I mean, I mentioned the power of just taking time away, right? If you haven't actually stepped back in your life and given yourself a time out, I mean, goodness, after all we've been through over the past 2 years, there has never been a better or more important time to just do that and check in with yourself and ask, do I like how I'm showing up? Do I like who I've been? And using that and using everything that comes up for you to then intentionally decide, okay, what does that now mean for how I want to move forward? There are so many clues in our pasts of the things that we're good at, of the things that we like, of the things that we don't like, but we have to be willing to really unconditionally ask ourselves those questions. And so creating the space and the time for me is absolutely the first step to doing that for oneself.
Yeah. And so I even think, gosh, I know everything that you say. I'm like, cool. That was my last question, but now I have another question. It's just like, I think that what's so great about what you just said too, is that it's like, it's really endless possibility. I think once I decided, okay, I want to be a person who makes $1 million, let's say that's what I'm scaling towards. I just really looked around and I was like, what about my current self-concept doesn't match my $1 million self? And I was also sharing an office with my boyfriend during the pandemic. And it actually also, we very much love each other. And it actually really worked out fine for us. It was fine. But when I thought about it, I was like, oh, now like you can see in the background, like I have this wallpaper that nobody else in the world would approve of except for me. It's very Alice in Wonderland, and like a yellow velvet couch. And I like live for my office. I have a blue wall. I have like all the things that just speak to me and feel like my brand. And I just get dialed in. I'm like, I am the only version of me. It converts to how much money I make. And do you find that, because these are entrepreneurs listening right now, do you find that like the more dialed into your self-concept and what you wear and transitioning into powerful environment and clothes and what have you, like thoughts essentially, which is what determines that, has transitioned into or translated into how much money you make and how many clients you have?
Oh my gosh. So what I learned that unlocked a whole new world for me was that I now outsource all decisions to my future self.
Yes.
I outsource those decisions to that future version who I see, making a certain amount of money, who I see up on stage, has the book, does the thing, right? The more you can connect to that future vision of yourself, the more you realize, oh, she's in charge. Don't know what to do. What would she do? What would she do? Outsource all of
you're speaking like right to the soul of this podcast right now. Sincerely, future you. So I haven't had a guest on in a while and we haven't done this segment. My producer's going to be so proud of me right here. Are you ready? What is the best thought that your future self has for you right now?
She has challenged me every single day to ask myself, what would you do today if you knew you couldn't fail? Because if I'm sitting there, I've had plenty of days where I'm sitting here saying, I'm kind of scared to make this offer. I'm going to press send on the email, right? Like, maybe I shouldn't launch that workshop, No, what would you do today if you knew you couldn't fail? Go out and do it. Just go out and do it. Yeah. She challenges me to ask myself that every single day. And as a result, I've put myself out there more and more amazing things have just continued to come my way because of it.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Yes, we could definitely end there. I could go on and on and on about this topic of the future self, but I think that was so eloquently put. And for those of you who are listening, if you want to find Amy and you want to read her future book that I'm sure will be out there in the world at some point, you have to connect with her. Where can we find you, Amy?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is @redefinepossibility, or on my website. You can email me from there, and it's www.redefinepossibility.com.
So good. I love that your website is made of real words. I decided in my branding expertise that like I would have like a punny website, and it's always so difficult to explain on podcasts because I'm like happening, but with a Y, and it's happening. And people are like, what? Okay, I'm confused. And they just won't go to my website. Eventually I'm going to rebrand the website, but I love Redefine Possibility. It is everything. And so we can't wait. Go over and connect with Amy. If you guys have questions for her, if you have feedback, if you want to see what Amy's going to be showing up wearing you ask me, leave a note, leave a review on the podcast, and connect with her over on Instagram, and let us know if you're listening to this episode. Take a screenshot of it, tag us in your stories so that we can kind of have a follow-up conversation maybe to this conversation.
Yeah. Tag me and let me know what you're wearing, and I'll bump you up. I'll praise it, of course.
Yes. Woo woo. Let's just make the self images match all of our $1 million selves. I love this. All right, Amy, thank you so much for coming on the show, and all of you guys really, really connect with that future self today. All right. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Hey, Hapsters. If you want to learn more about today's topic, head over to what'shappyning.com/podcast. That's what's happening, what'shappyning.com/podcast. If you're a business owner and you're resonating with what we talk about here, what are you even doing? Come hang out with me over where the party's at on Instagram at What's Happyning WJess. Again, that's happy, HAPPYNING, and book a discovery call to see if coaching is your next best step.